and in particular complex charts. So that means charts where there is lots of different information, lots of different categories that you need to deal with. Okay. At the end of the presentation, we'll have a question and answer session. So if you have any questions, just pop them in the question and answer box. Okay. So what are we specifically going to look at today? So the key features, what are the key elements that you need to pay attention to in a complex chart? And then we're going to look at how to structure your answer. So as maybe you know, there's always 3 elements to the task 1. We have the introduction, we have the overview, and we have the body. Okay, so we'll look at each of those in turn. And then we'll look at some of the useful language that you can use, okay, in each of those. So just to get us started, we're going to do a little true-false quiz. So can you put your answers in chat? So some general questions about the task 1. So the first one is, you need to write a description of a set of data. So would you say that was true or false? Okay, Nabella says true. Yes, we've got quite a lot of trues there. Dominica, Olivia. So yes, it's true. It's just a description. You don't want to put any opinion or analysis in there. Okay, that's not the correct format. You're just describing what you can see. Okay, so it could be a chart or a diagram, or it could be a process. Okay, fine, good. We've got a lot of trues there. That's right. It could be a map as well. Minimum word count is 200 words. Okay, all right. Good, and as some people have put up, it's 150. Okay, so your minimum word count is 150. The advice is about 30 minutes for the task 1. Okay, and again, we've got the correct answer, so 20 minutes. You really don't want to spend more than 20 minutes on the task 1. You need to have 40 minutes for the task 2. Okay. All right, so you should try and interpret the data. You should try and give some kind of analysis or opinion. Yeah, so I said before, yeah, very good, Muskan. No opinions, okay? No opinions. You don't need to say why this information is the way it is. You just need to describe it, okay? So I think we've already looked at that. Yeah, no personal opinion there. Okay. You should summarize the information. Okay. Main features, make comparisons where relevant. Yeah, very important. Okay, so you're describing the information, but you should also make comparisons between the different categories. Okay. All right, very good. Okay, so I'll just move rather quickly through that. Okay, so this is the example that we are going to use, this is the example that we are going to use today. So why is it complex? It's complex because we have various different categories. Okay, so we have 6 different countries. We have 2 different years, and we have male and female. So there's different aspects of the chart that you need to look at. It's not just 2 different categories that you are going to compare. Okay. So have a look at this. So what type of chart is it? First of all, okay, good. It's a bar chart. Okay, and what specifically are we measuring with this bar chart? Okay, very good, Patricia. We're comparing the percentages or the rates of employment in the different countries. Okay, and yeah, Barbara's right, by male and by female workers. Okay, what time periods are we looking at here? Okay, good, Pankaj. We got 2 different years. We got 1995 and 2005. Okay, it's not a period, it's 2 individual years. That's a good question, Mohammed. Can you put it in the question and answer session? Because I would like to spend a bit more time on that, okay? So if we've got 1995 and 2000, what tenses are we likely to be using here? Yeah, okay, very much definitely in the past, probably past simple, maybe some past perfect there as well. Okay. All right. Okay. So let's have a look at the structure. So as we said before, there's 3 parts to the task 1. First part is the introduction or the introductory sentence. Then we have the overview. And then we have the body with the details, okay, which you can divide up into maybe 2, maybe 3 different paragraphs, okay. So in this case, we're going to divide it into 2, body A and body B, okay. So what are we going to put in the introduction? What kind of information needs to go in the introduction? Okay, very good, Patricia. Patricia's on the ball today. Paraphrase the question. Exactly, Roberto. Yeah, what is it about? Okay, what it illustrates. And the type of graph as well. Yeah, okay. So what it shows, paraphrasing the title, unlikely to be more than 2 sentences, 1 sentence, 2 sentences maximum. Okay. Then we are going to have the overview. So what kind of information do we want to put in the overview? Okay, very good. Perhaps the key features. Anything else for the overview? Okay, the main trends, the highlights. Okay, very good. Yeah, as Noah said, highest, maybe highest figure or lowest figure. Okay. So some main points, again, it's quite short, the overview, probably maximum 4 sentences. Yes, you can put the overview at the end, Marhata. So 2 possible orders, introduction, overview, body, or introduction, body, overview. Okay. But it's very important that the overview is clear. All right. Also, overview, no exact figures, okay? We're looking at main trends, we're looking at the overall ideas, so don't put any exact figures into the overview, okay? Doesn't matter whether it comes after or it comes at the end, as long as it's clear, as long as it's in an individual paragraph, okay? We'll look at the overview a little bit more in a minute. Then we have the body. So the body, that's where you're going to put all of the details. That's where you're going to put all of the exact figures that you're going to use, the exact examples. And of course, this is going to be the main part of your answers. That's right, Roberto. We're going to look at the overview in more detail in a moment. Okay. All right, so keep the figures for the body, don't include the figures in the overview. Okay, so let's have a look at what we do now. So now what we're going to do is look at each part in turn. Okay, so first of all, the introduction. Okay. So as somebody was saying, quite a few people said, we don't want to use the same words as the question, so we want to paraphrase the title. So we're going to use synonyms, we're going to use different word formations, so we're not using the same words as in the title. Okay, you can also change the grammar of the sentence. Doesn't have to just be synonyms. You can change the way the sentence is formed as well. Okay. And yeah, make sure that what you put is actually accurate. Okay, the examiners do check what you've written against the chart. They don't not look at the chart. So make sure that what you've done is precisely what is there on the chart. Okay. All right. And keep it quite short. Don't put a lot of information. One of the negative points that the examiners are looking for is if you confuse detail and overview. Okay, that's likely to be a 5 in task achievement. So you want to make sure that your overview, your overall trends, and your detail is completely separate. Okay, don't confuse them in any way, and don't put too much in the overview. Okay, all right. We've already got a good example coming up there. That's very nice, Pankaj, very nice indeed. So this is, imagine if that was actually the words that was in the question. What word could we use instead of shows? Okay, very good. We could use illustrates, displays, gives information on. Okay, that's very good. Those would be the best one. Depicts is a very nice one. That's Mohammed and Alan. Okay. What about in 1995 and 2005? Okay, in 2 different years. Okay, remember it's 2 separate years. It's not a period of time. Okay, very nice. Altanai in the years of 1995 and 2000, 10 years apart. That's very good as well. Okay, so let's have a look at some different ways. So we have illustrates. A lot of people got illustrates. You could include the expression by gender. Okay. Between 1995 and 2000, that's good, Noza. Okay, we can also talk about the gender in different ways, between men and women. We can use the word compare. Okay, or we could say shows the change. So we've still got shows, but we've added another element there. Okay, so make sure that you always paraphrase the question. Remember, it doesn't count in your word count if you've used exactly the same words as in the question. Okay, yeah, that's fine. Vasiliki, that would be fine. Okay, yeah, compared by gender. Okay, so we're going to look a little bit at the band scores now, and what the examiners are looking at. So if you look at band 5, we've got, you can see there in the red, no clear overview. Okay, so the examiner cannot clearly see an overview in your answer. Very important to put the overview in a separate paragraph, okay, so that it's easy to see. And that you have a linking phrase to show that it is the overview. Okay. You can do it in both places, Mohammed. Both is fine. Okay. We also have recounts detail mechanically. Anybody any ideas what mechanically means? This is a very important point. Thanks, Mohammed. Mechanically, I think you're there. Roberto, one by one, kind of. Yeah, Nabia, just numbers. So, for example, you say it went up, it went down, it stayed the same. So you're just listing the changes. You're not connecting them in any way. Okay, so very, very important when you do the body, don't just list, try and use different sentence structures to put the information together and to create a link between the information. Okay. Then if we look at band 6, so we have an overview, and it's an okay overview, you know, it's got the right information in it. But band 7, you have a clear overview and you've highlighted the key trends. Yeah. So you've exactly picked out what the most important information is from that chart. Okay. Do you mean in the overview? Yes, Swans? In the brackets, you could do that in the overview. Yes, okay. So you could say in 6 different countries, and you don't need to name them all, but you could put them in the in brackets after that. Yeah, okay. Band 8 and 9 would, you know, you're just expressing it in a much better way, basically. Okay. So let's have a look at what we would put in the overview. Okay. So we're going to look at the different categories and what the different categories do. So if we look at the years, if we look at 1995 and 2005, can you see a general trend there between the years? Okay, good. So what's the general trend? Okay, yeah, I think Kier's got it. If we look at if we contrast 1995 with 2005, yeah. Yeah, I'm thinking only about the years. Yeah, 2005 is higher. So in all of the countries and both, good Triloka, in both of the genders, we have an increase in employment. Okay. And there's no exception to that. So that's very much something that you want to put in the overview. Okay. All countries, both genders, increase in employment. Okay. What about if we compare male and female? Overall, remember, if you look at the figures for males and the, okay, very good, Josephine. Yeah. And I know some people already wrote that. That's a good point as well. Yes, Wentz. But if we compare male and female, males always higher than females. Okay. In all of the countries that we've looked at. Okay. And what about the different countries? If we look at, say, female, Yeswanth already, I think, answered this, but just to look at it in particular, if we look at female employment over the 6 countries, what would we say? Yeah, it's good, Josephine, and yes, one goes. So there's quite a lot of fluctuation with the females. Yeah, okay. So let's have a look at that. So yeah, more men than women in employment in all of the 6 countries, and the employment rates went up, all countries and genders. Okay, and employment rates for women fluctuated or varied a lot between the different countries. Okay, so remember, we're looking at overall trends. We're not looking at any details at the moment. We're just looking at an overall comparison. Okay, so the genders, the countries, and the years. Okay. So now let's have a look at how we would write the overview. So we've got an overview here, but we've got some words missing. So how do we always need to start the overview? Okay, very good. Kira's got it, and Peter. Yes, Wans, Nora, and El. Good. Overall, just very simple. Overall, always put overall at the beginning of the overview. You don't need to think about it. Just put it down. Yeah, nothing else particularly works. Yeah. After you've said overall, you can use one of those introductory sentences like Yeswant and Sachismita have put. So it is clear, or it can be observed, or we can see that. You can also use after overall, okay? Don't use conclusion expressions. It's not a conclusion, just use overall, okay? So then we're going to look at the difference between the men and the women. So what are we going to put in the next gap in front of the percentage? Okay, very good. Yeah. Okay, a higher percentage of men were employed than women in all 6 countries. Okay, very good, everybody. And then the next one in, very good, Patricia, Keir, Joy, very good, you got that one. In both years, okay? Remember, it's 2 separate years that we're talking about, okay? And then we're looking at the genders. So employment for both genders in, oh, did I put that in? Sorry, employment for both genders. Yeah, well done, increased. My mouse is being a bit excitable. Yeah, thanks, Joy. Increased, can we, anybody got a synonym for increased? Okay, very good, Rose. Very nice. Rose. Jumped, remember the tense, grew. Okay, very good. So increased in each nation over the period. So that's our overall increase. That's the comparison between the years. Okay. So we've got an increase, but then we've got a bit of a fluctuation. Okay, very good. Altinai and Olga are already there. So however, okay, the proportion of women employed what are we going to put there? Okay, very nice, Irem. Okay, Chara, think about your tense. Yeah, and Aziz, remember that we're looking at 1995 and 2005. So we're completely in the past. Yeah, yeah, so varied or fluctuated, of course, would work as well. Okay. So notice we don't have any specific figures or specific countries in the overview. It's very much a general overview of the chart. Okay. So let's have a look at some of the language. So now we need to go to the body. And in the body, we are going to compare and talk about the different categories, okay? And one of the key grammar points that you need to think about with the task 1, well, with the task 2 as well, actually, is whether the categories are countable or uncountable, okay? Because your language is going to be different depending on which one it is. Okay, so if we think about men, let's look at the examples we've had there. Is men countable or uncountable? Okay, very good, Roberto and Muskan, countable. Okay, women? Okay, yeah, good, also countable. Okay, countries? Okay, very good, countable. Okay, what about employment? Yeah, not countable, sorry, uncountable. Okay, very good. Okay. So we've got here some words you can use with countable nouns, some you can use only with uncountable, and some you can use in both cases. Okay. So if you look at the words that are here on the side, which of those words could you use with countable nouns? Okay, many more and fewer. Okay, the majority of. Be careful, be careful. Yeah, countable needs to be many, remember. Okay, very good. And what would you put in the middle? What can you use with both? So we've got fewer, okay, or far fewer. Many more, okay, so few, fewer, many, always with countable nouns, okay. The greatest number of, so again, number is one of those words you can only use with countable nouns, okay. And as a lot of people put, the majority of, so the majority of has to be countable, okay. What can we put in the middle? What works with both countable and uncountable? Okay, yeah, Altanai, percentage. Okay, yeah, the highest percentage. Anything else? Okay, we've already used majority, remember? Let's have a look. Okay, so more, as Patricia said, that's good. Percentage and proportion, you can use with both. Okay, so they're fine in all cases. So what can we use with uncountable? What's left? Okay, yeah, less. Okay, yeah, and much. Okay, less, far less, and much more. Okay, so do think about the categories, think about whether they're countable or uncountable, and make sure you're using the correct words depending on which one it is, or choose one of the ones in the middle where you can use it with all of them. Yeah. Ratio you can use with countable. Okay. But fractions you can use with both. Okay, so fractions are easier if you're not sure about it because they will work with both countable and uncountable. Okay. So let's have a look at the body. So you've got to think about how to organize your answer. Okay, that's one of the issues with the complex ones is how are you going to organize what you say or what you write? So what are the different ways you could organize your answer? What are the different things that we could use as our basis? Okay, very good. So you could choose gender. Okay, exactly. Yes, yes, one from Josephine, right. You could use year as well. Yeah, so we've got years. So we've got gender, we've got years. Exactly, Noza. We've got country and Kara. We could do it by countries. So let's have a look at the options. So yes, men and women. Okay, we could start from the highest figures and go down to the lowest. Countries, as people said, by year. Okay. So you could choose different ones, it doesn't matter, but you need to be consistent. Okay, so if you decide to divide by male and female, then have one paragraph for male and one paragraph for female. If you decide to do it by year, one paragraph for 1995, one paragraph for 2005. But don't start by comparing men and women and then start talking about countries, okay? So consistency is what matters here, not which category you choose, okay? So we've here decided to go with men and women. So I think, as Yeswan said, one paragraph where you talk about the figures for men and one paragraph where you talk about the figures for females. Okay, keeps it very, very clear. All right. So we're going to fill in the missing words, and then we're going to have a look at some of the language. Okay. So Iceland had I think everybody's ahead there, yeah, the highest percentage of men in the workforce over the period, okay, with a rate of around 70% in 1995. What do we need to put in the next word, the next gap? Okay, think about your grammar here. Think a little bit about the grammar. We're adding more information. Very good, Antonio, absolutely right. We need to use here the ing form because you're adding more information. It's not a new point, okay? So rising to above 80% in 2005, okay? So that's the highest figure. Now we go to the UK with the lowest. Yes, you're right, we have to use an ing form there, Roberto. Okay, yeah, in comparison, in contrast, very nice, Eltonai. Meanwhile, it's okay, actually. I think in contrast or conversely, something like that, or on the other hand. Here we've got in contrast, okay. The UK had the lowest, where if you use whereas, you're going to be joining two sentences together. So that's fine, but it's not going to start a new sentence. It's going to continue the sentence before, okay? So the UK had the lowest male employment rate at the beginning of the period at around 55%. Okay, yeah, here. So 55%, but then we're at 70%. Okay, it's the beginning of a new sentence, so we don't want to use and. Okay, very good, Olga. And a few people had that, Muscan. Okay. By 2005, this you could put this figure or this percentage, but we're still going to need something after that to very close. We need to think about the tense. If you use by, what kind of tense do you commonly use with by? Oh, you're getting closer. Anastasia, very good. Well done, Anastasia. Not an easy one to get right. Very good, yeah. So it had risen. Okay, so remember that when you use by, had risen because it's before that point in time, okay, to approximately 70%, okay, and then if we're comparing that to the figures for Australia, New Zealand, and the USA, it's a very good, Vasiliki, a similar level, okay, a similar level to the other. So if we look at how we've organized this, we've talked about the highest percentage, we've talked about the lowest percentage, and we've talked about how those two have moved between the 2 years. And then the ones in the middle, we have just mentioned those at the end, and we've kind of put them together as a group, okay? So if some categories have a similar number, and you have quite a lot of categories to talk about, you can group them together, okay, and talk about an average number. Otherwise, you tend to have too much information to talk about, okay? So that's our first body paragraph. We focused only on men. We haven't talked about women. So now we're going to talk about women. So again, the country with the highest, yeah, it's the highest with the women. Yeah, remember we're looking at women now. Okay, so the highest proportion of women in the workforce was Switzerland. You have to say highest with proportion, with 55% in 1995. Think about your tenths. Okay, yeah, rising to just under 70% in 2005. Okay, very good, Ling. Yeah. More proportion. You can't say more. Okay, first of all, more would only be comparing to, and here we're comparing more. But with proportion, you need to use an adjective. So it needs to be highest or conversely lowest. You can't use most with proportion. Okay. So next one, this. Yeah, actually compared would work. Compared would work. Yeah. What are we going to put after this? Very good. Very, very good. Yeah, this contrasts sharply with Australia and New Zealand. Very good. Where I want to do this all together. Okay, very good. Yeah, so Cara and Kier, I think you had a good answer there. Just over, look at New Zealand. Okay, so yeah, we're looking at a fraction. New Zealand and Australia. Yeah. Good. Yes, a quarter. Okay, very good, Olivia and Mikbal, a quarter of the workforce. Okay. Remember, it's often approximate. You don't have to be exact, but it's pretty much halfway between 20% and 30%. Okay, a quarter of the workforce. You can also say, you can use a ratio, but then you wouldn't have a, okay? So it's a quarter, or, you know, you can say one in 4 women. Okay, yeah. And then finally, yeah. Yes, Roberta, that's fine. Yeah, okay, very good, guys. So we already used rising, so, you know, let's use a synonym. Let's use increasing. It's always better not to repeat the vocabulary. Okay. You can say 25%, but it's always good if the measurement is in percentages. It's good to have maybe 1 or 2 fractions in there, because it shows that you can change that language. You can manipulate the language, because the percentages are easy. You know, you can write a percentage, it's just a number. But if you're going to use some language and manipulate the language, then use a quarter. Okay, a third, half. So if there are percentages, I would always use 1 or 2 fractions there if you can. Yeah. Reaching would be fine, but without 2. Okay, so reaching 40%. Okay. What is the span for this essay? I asked Jamie because he wrote it. I think this is a band 9. Okay, so let's have a look at this. So I'm going to give you some overall tips now. While I'm giving you the overall tips, you can also have a look at the whole answer, which has been written out here. So we have the introduction, we have the overview, and then we have the 2 body paragraphs. Okay. So a few tips. Yeah, this is true of both parts of the writing. Don't start straight away. When you've got a chart or a line graph, you always want to just look at it, or a process for that matter, look at it for a few minutes, make sure that you've understood it before you start writing. Okay, it's really, really important. Make sure that you've decided how you're going to organize it, what the key features are that you're going to put in the overview. Really important to just take a couple of minutes to do that. Okay, it will actually make the writing of it much faster. Okay. As we said before, 20 minutes, really, 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 you do not want to be spending more than 20 minutes on task 1. You do need the 40 minutes for task 2, and it does carry more weight in the marks. Okay. The next 2 sort of go together. It's a terrible waste of time to count the words. So if you practice on the official sheet, which you can just download, you will get an idea of what 150 words looks like in your handwriting. Okay, so then when you come to the exam, you will be able to see, yes, okay, I'm definitely over 150 words here. Okay, and know what it looks like in handwriting. Okay, and lots of practice. There's many different types of charts, so you know, make sure that you've done the practice with all of them. Okay, so thank you very much. I think we're going to do some question and answers now.
Excellent. Thank you so much, Annalie. That was a really great presentation. Thank you, first of all. So, yeah, we have a lot of your questions in the Q&A. We also have some of them in the chat as well. So we'll try and get through them all in the time we have left. We have a question, first of all, from Say Peter, who says, do I have to mention all the information in the essay? So all the information in the graph, should that be mentioned in the essay?
You don't need to mention all of the information. You need to pick out the most important parts. Sometimes you have an example where it's actually quite simple. You don't have a lot of information. And in that case, you can talk about everything. But if there seems to be a lot of information, sometimes you get tables and there's really a lot of figures there. They don't want you to just give all the figures. Remember what it said about mechanical reporting. You don't want to just list figures. Look at what it means, okay? Where are the highest figures? Where are the lowest figures? Which ones are similar or the same? Are there any exceptions somewhere that you can highlight? Okay, what are the main trends? Are they all generally going up? Are they all generally going down? But you don't need to mention every figure. Also, as I said, if some categories have similar figures, group them together, give an average of the figure. Okay.
Excellent. Thanks, Annalie. And guys, you can vote for the questions you would like us to answer the most in the Q&A. So you can give the questions the thumbs up and we will answer the most popular questions. So that's great. We have a question here from Nabiha, who's saying, does writing less than 150 words affect your band score?
Yes. It does very much. Okay, you will lose marks, you will lose bands in the task achievement. So, you know, for example, if you write 130 words, the examiner will mark your essay. Let's say he decides it's a band 6 in terms of the content, and then we'll deduct 1 band for the fact that it's under length. So you would end up with a 5 rather than a 6. The more you are below the word count, the more bands you will go down in task achievement or task response if it's task 2. So it really is, it's very, very important to be over 150 words.
Yeah, definitely, I agree. Another question here with a lot of votes from, say, Peter. Well, can we download this presentation? And I can answer that one. We will put the webinar on our Facebook page, IELTSonlinetest.com. So you'll be able to find it there in the next couple of days, okay? And if someone could post the link to the page in the chat room, that would be fantastic. Great. Another question here from Irem. Irem says, can we use the simple present tense in task 1?
If you are talking about a bar chart or a graph, okay, the most important thing is that you check the timeline before you start writing, okay? So it will depend on the timeline. Most of the bar charts and line graphs are in the past, in which case you must use past tenses. Occasionally you have a forecast into the future with the line graph, and in that case you need to use specific phrases like it is forecast that, or it is predicted that. You won't be using the present tense to describe the line graph or the bar chart. Okay, it's not really possible, but you would for the process.
Yeah,
okay,
absolutely.
So it depends on the task, yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. I would say, I would add to that just in the introduction, when you say the chart shows, that's probably the one of the only times you'd use. Yeah, excellent. Shay Peter is asking another question, all the important questions here. In the overview, you wrote both in 2 sentences following each other. Is this repetition counted as a minus point by repeating the same word in a couple of the sentences?
Well, it doesn't really work in terms of like a minus point. There's no points in IELTS. There are band scores. So it's an overall impression. So if the examiner feels that you don't have very much of a resource for vocabulary and that you are relying on the words that are in the question, then that will give you a low mark in the lexical resource, in the vocabulary section. So it's not really about specific points, it's about the impression that the examiner gets by the range of vocabulary that you're using. So you want to show him that you have a range of vocabulary so he can give you a good mark. He says, yes, you've got a good resource there.
Yeah, definitely. If I could add to that as well, sometimes students try a little bit too hard not to repeat the words, and that can lead to some quite unnatural expressions. If you're not sure about the accuracy of your writing, I would stick to familiar words. It's okay to repeat them once or twice. You won't lose marks for that as long as you use a variety over the course of your essay. So yeah, Dominica is asking, will there be a tutorial for writing task 2? And yes, we will have one of them in the near future. We're interested in getting your ideas for the topics of future webinars. So in the chat, please make suggestions of specific topics you'd like us to cover, and that's something we can look at in the future. Okay, we've focused on agree, disagree last week, which is up on the Facebook group. We have also done a direct question essay in the past, so you can check them out on the Facebook group.
Basil is actually asking about a webinar on maps and another one on processes.
Yeah, excellent. That's definitely something we could cover. Yeah. Some of you are saying you're not on Facebook. There is a chance we could upload it onto the IELTS Online test.com website as well. If you're not on Facebook, you will see about uploading the video to our website as well. So you should be able to find it there. Excellent. Now, Kier has a question here about complex sentences. Is it important to use complex sentences in writing task 1?
Yes. Again, in order to get a good score in the grammatical range and accuracy, certainly the majority of your sentences should be complex, and it's best if you can use a range of different structures. So use some conjunctions like whereas, while, although. Use the ing form, as we saw in the example, rising to, increasing to. Use prepositions, use introductory phrases. Very important to use a range of different structures in order to get a good mark in the grammar. It's not just the individual words, it's also the sentence structure, the syntax.
Excellent, thank you. Yep. Altanai here has a question saying, for a band 9, must it contain at least 200 words?
Not necessarily. You could have a task 1 that was 150 words that could be a band 9 if it answered the question very successfully. No mistakes in the vocabulary, no mistakes in the grammar, wide range of vocabulary, wide range of sentence structures, well organized. It could easily get a 9. Yeah, it's not about writing more in order to get a 9, it's about accuracy.
Excellent. Yep. And Mohammed Akhtar is asking here, what can we do when we need to compare 2 types of graph or charts, say like a bar chart with a table?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so if the category or if the measurement of the 2 tables is different, or the 2 charts is different, you don't need to compare them. You will talk about one and then you will talk about the other. There's an example I have in a book, I remember, where there is a bar chart about the most popular types of films, and then there is a pie chart about the earnings from different kinds of films. So it's not the same subject, so you don't need to compare them. In the overview, you need to give the highlights of both of them, but you couldn't really compare them. Talk about one, then make it very clear that you're moving on to the second one. You can use a phrase like moving now to the pie chart, or turning now to the pie chart. We can see that. So make it very clear when you're talking about one and when you're talking about the other.
Absolutely, yeah. And that's something we could potentially cover in a future webinar as well, for sure. Mac is asking here, can the introduction and overview be in one paragraph? So then one body A and one body B. Is it okay to combine the intro and the overview?
It's not necessarily a problem, but I would suggest putting the overview in a separate paragraph and making it absolutely clear. So the examiner has to say, that is a clear overview. I can see the overall at the beginning of the paragraph. I can see where it ends. I can see where the detail starts. You know, don't make it difficult for them. Yeah, make it easy for them to give you a good mark.
Definitely. And related to that, actually, Atakan is asking, what is the most important factor to complete task 1 with a good point, assuming a good band?
Mm-hmm. So make sure you've got a clear overview, okay? Because you will lose a lot of marks in task achievement if you don't have a clear overview. You can always reduce the amount of detail, or you can condense the amount of detail. But if you have only detail and no overview, then you can't really get a good score. So that would be in the same way that in the task 2, it's very important to have a conclusion. rather than a third body paragraph. It's very important to have the overview in a task one.
Absolutely. And related to this, Altanai has asked, can I write a broad assessment reveals that instead of overall? This is for the overview paragraph. Is it okay to introduce that paragraph by saying a broad assessment reveals that rather than overall?
I would just stick with overall.
I agree.
Okay.
Yep.
Really. Again, don't make it more difficult for yourself. Just use what you know works. Yeah.
Definitely, definitely. I think again, some students try to paraphrase a bit too much. You should definitely paraphrase some expressions, but keywords like overall tell the examiner, they're like a signpost for the examiner that this is your overview. So it's very important to make that clear. Excellent. We just have a couple more minutes left. We have a lot of questions to get through. Prashant has said that reading techniques would be very helpful. That is something we're currently making a video on reading skills, which will be up on our website soon. So you can keep an eye out for that, Prashant. We'll be looking at reading in a bit more detail. We'll have a look at a couple of more questions here.
Can I just answer one that came up quickly,
sure,
Roberto? Yeah. Don't use contractions, okay? It's academic writing. You shouldn't use any contractions in the task one, no contractions in the task two.
Yeah, great. And that was a question from Barbara as well here in the Q&A, so excellent. Let's see, are we going to have a webinar before the 9th of February? Patricia, I believe we will at some point next week. So yes, should have a bit of time before your test next Saturday. Okay, let's see. Aslam is asking, should I have to conclude the essay at the end? Should I write a conclusion?
You don't need a conclusion. You need the overview. There's no conclusion in the task one.
Exactly. Great. Well, thank you very much, guys. I'm sorry that we are now out of time, so we won't be able to get around to all your questions, but we will be having another webinar soon, so please join us. We'll post the details of that on our website, IELTSonlinetest.com, and on our Facebook group as well. So there'll be details of that very soon. I would just like to, again, thank Annalie for the presentation today. It's been a pleasure. And thank you to all of you for joining us. We hope to see you again soon.
Thank you, everybody. Bye-bye. Thank you.
Bye for now.
Bye. Bye-bye.
Okay.